Folks, so I saw this report the other day come out from Redfin. I'll be honest, it wasn't the other day. That was just something I say out of habit. I actually saw it a few weeks ago, and it was talking about how 16.3% of transactions are going back on the market. So if a home goes under contract, about 16.3% of those homes are going back on the market. And in some areas like Fort Worth and Dallas, it's as high as 22.5%. So what that means is a home's been on the market, it goes under contract, and for one reason or another, it comes back on the market. Let's break the transaction down into two parts, right? So the first part, think of that as your option period. That's going to be like when you get your inspections done, you can negotiate repairs. Depending on where you are, it's going to be called an option period, a due diligence period, an inspection period. But basically think about it as a buyer, that's the only time you can just back out with no ramification. Now you're going to be out the cost of your inspection and you're going to be out the cost of your option period, but for all intents and purposes, you're not in default if you back out during that time. Now let's talk about the second portion after option period, right? After that, something's got to happen. Appraisal comes in low or something of that nature. Maybe it's a financing situation, but it happens after the option period. Now, interestingly, about 70% of these homes that fall out of contract happen during the option period, which obviously would make sense because that's when it's the easiest for a buyer to back out. Now, I want to go over three different, I guess you could call it phases or reasons, or maybe three different patterns that I've noticed when a home comes back on the market. Now, one of those is going to be the fault of the agent to a certain degree. We're going to call this the financial and emotional qualification. Now, every buyer understands that they need to be qualified, but I don't think they don't go at it the right way. And what I mean by that is, let's use $500,000 for that example. Let's say you go to a lender and they say that, yeah, you qualify for $500,000. Okay, great. Let's go look for some homes. Well, what is your payment? And I see a lot of times a buyer will go under contract during this option period and they'll find out that the payment is going to be substantially higher than what they were thinking. And then they decide to back out because they can't afford the home. And there's a lot of things that could go in to adding up what your monthly payment is. I mean, you've got taxes, you've got insurance. Those are the top three that most people know about, but sometimes they don't really take into consideration because if you're buying in one area, you might have a tax rate of 2.4%, and then you go just a few minutes down the road and you might have a tax rate of 1.6%. So it's going to vary drastically. Another thing is going to be MUDs or PIDs or HOAs and all these little things that can add up to your monthly expense to make it to where you can't afford the home anymore. Another thing is going to be the emotional qualification, and I think this is going to really land on the shoulders of the agent because like what I like to do is I want to sit down with buyers, I want to do a buyer consultation and really find out like why do you really want this house, what are your wants, and what are your needs? And when we're looking at homes, I'm going to remind you of these things. And the reason is I want to give a little pushback to the buyer instead of saying like, oh, do you like it? Let's go write an offer. Oh, do you like it? Let's go write an offer. I say, hey, you guys say you like it, but it doesn't have a 3-car garage. You mentioned you really want a 3-car garage. Well, if the buyer can tell me some reasons like, oh, but it's got this, this, and this, it's like, okay. And I'm not going to argue with them. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if they want to write an offer, I'm going to support that. But I just want to make sure I give a little resistance because guess what? They might not be thinking about those things. And during the option period, they're going to be in the house when the inspector's in there, and they're going to start looking at it, and they're like, holy crap, this home isn't as nice as I thought it was. I just got really excited because it's pretty. It doesn't fit anything I need. And then they back out, and then they've wasted time and everybody's money, or they've wasted everybody's time and they've wasted some of their money. It kind of depends on how you look at it. So financial and emotional qualification is very important. The next one is going to be, and this is going to sound a little bit ugly, that's not my intention, but it's definitely something I've seen more predominantly over the past 3 years, and that's going to be influencer versus expert agents. Now, due to social media and the way that the algorithms feed some of these, I guess you would say agents, if you will, these agents are really, really good at getting themselves out on social media. Therefore, they're getting business, right? I'm not knocking them there. They're doing really well. And this number two and number three are going to tie together. So this will make sense here in a second. But some of these agents, they're very good on the social media. Therefore, people think that they're good at real estate. They're doing business, but they're not involved with the transaction a whole lot. So they're not developing that expertise through closed transactions. And a lot of times what will happen is something will go sideways in the transaction and they don't understand how to handle it. And there's something else I've noticed with a lot of these agents, and I will argue with anybody on this. A lot of these agents that are really good at social media marketing have larger than average egos, and emotions, just anything goes wrong, emotion. And an agent like myself, I'm just like, hey, let's just calm down, man. We all got the same goal at the end of the day, right? You want to buy the house, I want to sell the house, or maybe I have the buyer and the listing side. It's like we all have the same goal, and I have to remind people of that. And I will tell you, over the past 2 years, I've had some real struggled transactions where it took every ounce of energy not to lose my temper, because I would have agents on the other end of the line that they're talking nasty to me, they're cussing at me, and I say, hey, calm down, it's gonna be fine. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's really, really difficult. So I would say that is one aspect of it. Now, kind of blending into that is going to be the disconnect between a transaction coordinator and the actual transaction itself. So I want you to picture this: an agent that's getting a lot of their business from social media, and it takes a lot of time to do social media. It really, truly does. So if you have agents that are posting 2-3 times a week or a day, they're not able to feed the relationships when their clients. And what they'll do, let me walk you through a scenario. This is the best way for me to do it, just the way my brain works. Let me explain it to you this way. Let's say buyer lead comes in through whatever social media platform it might be. Agent meets with that buyer. Due to law changes now, that buyer has to sign a buyer representation agreement with said agent. Agent starts showing the buyer homes. Buyer likes a home, submits an offer, they go under contract. That agent puts that buyer with the TC, transaction coordinator. Now, transaction coordinators are fantastic at keeping deadlines, documents in line, and checklists, but there's a disconnect because they're not able to go to the inspection. They're not able to walk in the home. They don't have the experience of like messing with homes, touching them, seeing them, doing all that stuff. So when things get really stressful, I don't think that transaction coordinator is able to hold the hand of the buyer through the transaction and kind of ease that pressure. And a lot of times when people get scared and they get nervous, they don't feel like they have good guidance, they lock up. And when a buyer locks up, if they have the ability to back out, well, that's a safety mechanism. They just back out of the transaction and everybody's lost time and money at that point. And in some situations, it might have been the perfect home for that buyer, but because they didn't have the proper guidance, they didn't make it to the closing table. And the truth is, most transactions don't fall apart because of one little oops. Oftentimes it's a series of little problems that have happened, and sometimes it happens from the beginning, that first communication that you have with that agent. If something goes a little bit sideways and you're dealing with somebody who has a big ego, man, they just want to mess with you the whole time, and it can be really hard. And I'll be very honest, sometimes it's hard for me to separate myself from the transaction, although I would say I've gotten very, very good at it over the years. But anyways, folks, that's the end of the video. Homes are selling, but more of them are canceling before they actually make it to the closing table. And I'm just curious, have you ever been under contract before and had your property come back on the market, or have you been a buyer and you've decided to back out? I'd love to hear your stories below. And if you got some value out of this video, the best compliment you could give me is a referral by sharing this with a friend or family member. And until next time, I hope you have a great day.